taking picture. I had the phone on picture because I took a picture for one of the video websites I do. So I'm like trying to turn the video on, and it's taking pictures of me. I got to put it back. Let me do a little update, okay? And this is like a real time, whatever. Thursday. It's Thursday. It's Thursday, November. What is 29, I guess, at about 9:30. There's always updates to do, and this is just one that I checked news online, and I figured let me do a few things. That just is a story about the district attorney, Mark Gonzalez. They finally aired the clip. The Daily Show was in town. Those of you who watch my videos, I told you the producer had messaged me on Facebook, maybe to be part of the segment, actually. But they contacted me from the Daily Show, and I told someone the other night about that as well. But I didn't respond because I really don't have any desire to be on the Daily Show. But it might be because of some of the social justice issues you see me speak on. So I guess it aired last night, and there was a clip, and Mark Gonzalez, the DA, I just read, I don't go to his Facebook page, but I'm looking on the Kohler Times, and it showed like he was promoting it, and I don't know, if you read it, I won't post it, just go to the Kohler Times online, and they are the one media outlet that I saw that they had the story on. And it just seemed, I don't know, a little unprofessional the way he was talking about it. But then the other thing that might be a little disturbing about it is they joked about Mark Gonzalez being a member of a biker gang, but I think he might still be like a member emeritus of one of the biker gangs, and they were joking about that. I heard on the Bob Jones radio local talk show, he had one of the candidates that's running for, a local councilman position or whatever. I forget his name. Cantu maybe. But he was, I think he's going to win. It sounded like he's going to win whatever. He's got every endorsement. But it was interesting. He's got a police endorsement, all the endorsements. But then at the end he said, and all the corruption. I found it interesting that he mentioned that. Now, if I were going to do the other news thing that was also a little disturbing, but it wasn't one thing that caused me to just do this quick update, was like a few other things I'll mention. Last night it said that there was a woman without a driver's license who ran over and killed a 70-something-year-old man on Ayers Street, Corpus Christi. The other day you had someone had stolen a car in Corpus Christi, auto theft, from Ayers Street also. I like Ayers Street, and I walk on Ayers Street, but it's the other side of town, but I like that area, though people do avoid it sometimes because of the crime. And the vehicle that was stolen, the officers were in pursuit, and then it went somewhere on the other side of the cross town by one of the streets over there, and the vehicle supposedly rammed the police units, and the police units had fired. It was nobody was injured as far as I know or killed, but cops had to shoot, and I'm not sure if they ever caught those two suspects. They said they were on the loose. Okay, that's pretty big in the sense that it's not that uncommon for some of this. And Mr. Markle, I read in the local media, gave a report. The Kohler Times, I think, talked about it and how they're doing so really good. Like the number of every crime seemed to have been down. And I thought to myself, but just the ones I know of the people that were killed recently. I just questioned the numbers, that's all. The unreported ones. Who's doing the numbers? What else was I going to say on that? I forget. Oh, and the woman last night, it said Wednesday, that ran over a 70-something-year-old man. and killed him. She then fled the scene, but then later came back to the scene, and she had no driver's license, and she received a ticket for the death of that man. She received a ticket equal to like a traffic ticket for the death of that man. We have had civilians, sadly on bicyclists and all, that were run over by people accidentally who had driver's licenses, who were not drunk, and went to prison. Because if you kill a civilian and you flee the scene and you have no driver's license, there's multiple charges there, not for a ticket. And it just makes me wonder, who was that woman? There was a officer who ran over and killed a man, I think it was on Air Street. This was a few years ago. And I'm sure he was speeding at night without lights. This is very common practice. Also on Air Street, we had an officer pulling out of one of the burger places, a famous Red Line Burger, and all the witnesses said he crashed, hit a woman. What happened in all that? Nothing. That's what happened. Now let's do the national. I watch news and read news. The top story breaking on every news site, meaning ABC, NBC, CBS, all of the world news of the so-called media in our country, World News Tonight, all those sites, top news, is Michael Cohen pleads guilty. And the headline is Russian investigation. And then I just read it. What did he plead guilty to? Michael Cohen, the former lawyer called the fixer for Mr. Trump, cooperating with Mr. Mueller and this probe. He actually legally had contacts with people in Russia because Trump, before running for president, was going to open up one of the Trump Tower, Trump Motel, or whatever. So Michael Cohen, as Trump's lawyer, they were making like a deal, a real estate deal in Russia, which Trump has had things like many international businessmen have. So that was not criminal. And he had contacts with Russians about opening up a hotel in Russia. And these were not illegal contacts, by the way. And he revealed to Mr. Mueller that he talked to some of those business people in 2015 and 2016. And Mr. Mueller agreed, there's nothing wrong about it. And then Mr. Mueller asked him, and do you remember any other talks you had about a legitimate business deal, mind you, with the Russians? And Cohen, these are called perjury traps. And Michael Cohen supposedly told Mr. Mueller, no, I've had, that was it. I talked to them about the Trump Tower deal in Moscow, and Mueller found out he talked to somebody after 2016 about criminal activity, no. About something that was hidden and shaky, no. About the deal for Trump's business to open up the Trump Tower in Russia, in Moscow. That's the lie. Okay? What's the stupidity of this? It made it top Russia breaking news on all mainstream U.S. media. ABC, NBC, CBS. Russia investigation. What a joke and a scandal. And if we went back to talk about the real Russian collusion, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican or a conservative, but I look at this. And most people that are in the know, I saw the media reported a poll the other day, the media, mainstream media, said the country is split evenly on whether the Mueller probe is a witch hunt or legitimate. Oh, it is split even. That was top story. I think it was 51% of the public said it's a sham. And 40-something, the Democrat base, said, well, that's not 50-50. 51% to 40-something% meant more than half of the American public that were polled about this saw what I just explained to you. I'm not a Trump supporter, but for me to read on news, which I'm a newsreader, top breaking world news today on ABC, NBC, CBS, of course CNN, even Fox has it. The Russia invested. What did you get Manafort on? He was just say Trump wanted to open up a business, legitimate, and as Trump's lawyer, he had contacts with Russians. Totally okay. What did Hillary Clinton do? You say it doesn't take much. Hillary Clinton illegally had contacts with the Russians that we know illegal because the Clinton organization, the Clinton and the Democrats, paid a man by the name of Michael Steele, a former British spy, to have illegal contacts with the Russians. They were illegal because Mr. Steele was not a U.S. citizen, and he was collecting information to interfere in a U.S. election. The information he collected was either outright false or unverified, but this was paid for by the Clinton people, that they used like a law firm to skirt around the law. And they hired somebody to have illegal contacts with the Russians, paying money for these illegal contacts that the Clintons themselves denied to the New York Times initially that they paid for all that. And later, the New York Times even said they lied to us because it was illegal what they did. Because they were indeed interfering with the U.S. election by having these contacts with Russians. Then when they got that information back, which is referred to as the Russian dossier on Mr. Trump, that itself, that whole process of obtaining that information was violation of campaign laws and everything else. But it was with the Russians. Don't forget, it wasn't like another country. It was with the Russians that they illegally did this with, which is an amazing thing. And then when that information came back, it was leaked to the press through people that were in the know, meaning people that work for intelligence agencies and all, had a, quote, leak strategy to leak things out to interfere with the U.S. election, because that was indeed false information or unverified information that was used to obtain FISA warrants on Carter Page civilians, if you will, that were working, U.S. citizens that were working, joined with the Trump campaign. Now, all of this is illegal. We all know this. That's why you had a 51%. And then when all this information came in, it was used to see if Trump and his people had any illegal collusion with the Russians, meaning you yourselves had illegal collusion with the Russians, the Democrats, Hillary, and some within the deep state. And you took all of this illegal collusion information with the Russians to find that Mr. Cohen was doing a legitimate business deal, not representing Trump, meaning he's not in the administration. Trump was not president yet. And you asked Cohen, and you talked about opening up that Trump motel in Moscow, Mr. Cohen, yes. In 2015, yes. 2016, yes. That was it, yes. We got you. You lied, because you contacted him one more time. What a scam and a sham. And when Mrs. Clinton was Secretary of State, the other Russian thing is her illegal Clinton Foundation that illegally was allowing foreign governments to pump money into that foundation while she was Secretary of State representing the United States. And she gave favorable deals, particularly to the sale of the uranium to Russia. Meaning when Clinton was actually in government as Secretary of State, she gave favorable approvals to foreign actors, including Russia, because she was collecting tons of money, and her husband was giving $1 million speeches in Russia during that time. All of that was supposed to be revealed to Mr. Obama by regulation, rule, and law. And she hid that. So you have so much illegal, corrupt collusion with Russia that is well known and documented, and now books have been written on it. And the mainstream media is silent on that. And it shows you how the public is not ignorant. Because why would you have a poll? I don't ever watch a Trump speech. I don't need to watch a tweet or listen. I don't read his tweets or anything. I'm a newsreader. I try to inform myself. I think I'm familiar that he says it's a witch hunt, it's a witch hunt. I believe it is, not because he says it, but because the media, the public are not ignorant. That's why. Now, Mr. Jerome Corsi, it's interesting, I want to go along, but Jerome Corsi is another man who came out publicly this last week, said the same thing. He said the Mueller team are rogue prosecutors, and Mr. Mueller is living up to his history of corruption that was documented in the Whitey Bulger affair out of Boston. Mueller was the head of the FBI, out of one of the most corrupt FBI offices that was documented because they cooperated sort of with Mr. Whitey Bulger. And there was even a man by the name of Connolly working for Mueller that was sent to prison, FBI, corrupt criminal acts. And I believe Mueller is not a man of integrity when I look at this. Mr. Corsi Jerome Corsi is like a conservative man. He was somewhat associated with InfoWars and Alex Jones out of Austin and Roger Stone and other people. And Mr. Corsi, when Mueller said, what they're trying to find is, even if they found it, it would be hard for me to express or explain, but I'll try real quickly. They're trying to see the Russia collusion. Did Trump and his people have any inside information that WikiLeaks was going to leak some of these emails that were leaked on the Clintons? Now remember one thing. The Russians, Julian Assange, hiding out in the Ecuadorian embassy as of now, U.S. slipped and said they have an indictment on him. This came out recently in the last few weeks. Was it a slip? We don't know. I've defended Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. I follow him on Twitter, but I don't really read. But just to be I defended him because, in essence, WikiLeaks, in my mind, is not a criminal terrorist organization. And I defended Julian Assange when the Republicans and conservatives were trying to call him a terrorist, like John McCain and others. I said, no, they provide a function because they shine light on the corrupt inner dealings of governments, including the United States. So remember this. The emails that were indeed leaked on the Clintons, they were not fake. They were not a Russian dossier, fake information. They were true information about corruption behind the scenes, even in the democratic process when they kind of screwed Bernie Sanders, okay? So Julian Assange and the quote, if the Russians were the one that had the emails, these were not false emails. These were true shining the light under the corruption of Hillary Clinton. That's all it revealed, besides the crime she committed in deleting and getting rid of things that were subpoenaed by Congress. And the public looks at all this and says, what a scam and a sham. Now, what they're trying to find at this time, Mr. Mueller, is whether or not Trump's people had contacts with Julian Assange. Meaning, did they know contacts with Assange first would not be illegal. There was a report by The Guardian, and I like The Guardian. Guardian is somewhat of a liberal news, a British news outlet. But The Guardian reported, and they might have been wrong, but they said there was reports that Paul Manafort, another Trump guy, had 2 or 3 meetings with Julian Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy. He's hiding out from the U.S. in the Ecuadorian embassy, okay? Now, even if some of Trump's people had contact, in my mind, with a media organization, and that media organization obtained, like any other media organization, New York Times, Washington Post, when you obtained the Ellsberg Daniel Ellsberg and the famous thing that the media never stops talking about, the Nixon thing, the Ellsberg papers and the Watergate scandal. Okay, Daniel Ellsberg, everybody looks at him as a noble whistleblower. He did indeed have documents illegally, but when they were given to the New York Times as a journalistic outfit was not held criminally liable for publishing secrets, if you will, of deep state, whether it's Nixon or whether it's either side of the aisle. So what Assange has done is a service to us, besides revealing the things in NSA, National Security Agency, and Andrew Snowden and all the other things. Assange has done a service. But what Mueller is trying to find out is, did Trump and his people know ahead of time that Assange was going to post these emails on WikiLeaks? Even if they knew all this, they were not actually colluding, paying money to get the emails themselves, or paying money to get fake, which Hillary and the Democrats actually did. But what Mueller is saying is, if Trump and his people, whether it's Jerome Corsi, whether it's Manafort, if they had any contacts with, who cares if they had contacts with Assange? And it's debatable whether they did. And Mr. Corsi now has come out publicly. They just sent Papadopoulos. These were perjury traps that Mueller set. And the one with Mr. Cohen is another one. And it's a joke that they're doing this. And it's a joke that the media has not told you any of this. And that's why it's 50. So, if you had contacts with Assange and you knew about it, that's nothing. That's nothing more than journalistic privilege, and you know something's going to be leaked. Second, what was leaked was true things about Hillary. And she committed crimes by deleting and getting rid of and wiping servers and everything else, trying to hide from the public information. And her connections, what I related a few minutes ago in this video, were indeed illegal. It was favorable treatment to foreign actors while she was Secretary of State, and her family and the nonprofit personally profiting by millions and millions and millions of dollars. These were all violations of people that were in government, not a private lawyer working for Trump when he was representing him in a business. So that's why it is indeed a witch hunt. I don't need Mr. Trump to tell me it's a witch hunt. The media thinks we're idiots. So that's where we're at. Jerome Corsi, conservative man, associated with Roger Stone, he just came out and said the same thing. And what did Mr. Mueller try to have him admit to and to keep it sealed? Meaning this Mueller is acting corruptly and he's rogue. Jerome Corsi, when they said, we want to contact you, Mueller and his people, he willfully handed over all of his emails, wasn't subpoenaed. Now remember, Hillary had her emails and everything subpoenaed by Congress. After the subpoena, she destroyed them. That's a crime. And her excuse was, I had pictures and I had emails about my family, I didn't want them to get out. And when Mr. Comey, James Comey, was grilled about that by Congress, wasn't that a crime that she destroyed them? He himself said, well, maybe she had personal pictures. You don't destroy anything, whether Congress subpoenas it, Justice Department, or even a local if something is subpoenaed in a legal action and you destroy the evidence, that's a crime. The intent was you were hiding something from Congress. And the media is silent on all that. Okay, I think I covered just about enough. Mr. Corsi handed everything over. They wanted to interview him to see, did you know ahead of time whether Assange was going to leak? Even if they knew all that, it's not a crime. Unless Trump and them actually hacked illegally into the server. But nobody's saying they did it, that the Republicans did it or Trump did it. The other falls in the category of the Daniel Ellsberg thing, which I told you. Media organizations have the right, and Assange and WikiLeaks in my mind is a media organization. And they have the right, if they obtain things that are exposing corruption to then reveal those things. And that's exactly what WikiLeaks does, to the service of us. And I've defended him from the beginning, WikiLeaks. So Corsi handed everything over. And then they asked Mr. Corsi. Mueller's team said, did you have contacts with this one, this person, this person, this person? It said, as far as I know, no, I never did. Then Mueller and his team actually handed over back to him what they found on his emails, his servers, and everything. He was not hiding it because he willfully handed everything over. They said, you want to refresh your memory? Then the Mueller team said, this is who you spoke to. And you said you didn't. Not a big deal, person. They said, go look at it tonight, come back tomorrow, Mueller to Corsi, and amend your statement. He looked at it, he said, oh, yes, I had this call 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I forgot, I wasn't covering up, I gave you all the info. He amended his statement, and they accepted it. They said, that's fine. You did nothing wrong. My doorbell's ringing. I do everything live. So, I'm in the middle of the video. Oh, Betty. Look, I don't hide. So, what they got Corsi on, and I'll end this, so it's going to be different. They got Corsi on now, after Mr. Mueller said, amend your statement, did you talk to so-and-so? We have the records you gave us that say you spoke to someone. He amended it. Yes, I did. I just forgot, he said. That's what they got him on. That's what they want to put him in prison for. They said, you know what? We went back and looked at it, and we are now, if you will, Mueller is not operating in good faith. He did the same thing with General Flynn, and that was a perjury trap. But then he wanted Jerome Corsi to plead guilty, like the Cohen, the Russia, to plead guilty to something that was just a lapse of memory. That Mueller himself and his group, like the Flynn thing, admitted he's not purposely trying to mislead. But they caught him in a perjury trap. And get this, they said, now we want you, Mr. Corsi, to plead guilty to lying in this Russian thing. And it's sealed. You will go down as a felon for lying to us, and you can't tell anybody what it was about. And he said, the hell with that. He said, I ain't taking this plea deal. And he even went to some of the mainstream media. What a joke. And Papadopoulos and others they did this to. So whether you're on the left or the right, if you're a civil libertarian, you should have spoken out on these things, okay? And the media doesn't. And our local media is pretty much a joke. So I hit a couple of local things. That was national. Okay, that was FedEx at my door. Okay? I watch bullets flying in my house. I'm not packing heat. Oh. All right, that's it. That's a little update. We'll see what happens. God bless everybody.